What's going on, guys? Illuminostic late night. Usually can't sleep until like 2 a.m. anyways, so I thought I'd pop on outside. Pounding ayahuasca. Got ayahuasca blood all over my hands. But at any rate, I thought I'd pop on and see what kind of late night audience I get. I'm trying to do everything I can to grow the channel a little bit. And I was thinking earlier today about this article that I saw. I think it was, the New Yorker or some stupid publication like that. And there's sort of this cliche challenge to people that propose that there should be a revolution. What are you going to do the morning after the revolution? And realistically, most people don't have much of an answer for that. And if they do have an answer, it's usually some, prefab cookie cutter schism, like capitalism or Marxism or socialism or communism or Satanism or whatever, and none of those things are really answers. And then it occurred to me that the reality is that there actually is only like one set of answers. There's only one possible course of action. And this is actually true. It's pretty mind-blowing because, I think one of the weapons that has been sort of used, part of the social engineering narrative, I guess, or protocol has been to sort of confuse people about what opinions are and what truth is. It could be just that, people have accidentally created this circumstance where people have lost a sense of what is truth and what is opinion. Some of these things that are exploited by our overlords are not actually engineered by them. They're just sort of lucky happenstance circumstances that they turn to their advantage. And so it doesn't really matter. It's neither here nor there. But that is a big problem, really, for people. Truth seekers and, those of us that want to live in a sane, rational world, creates quite an issue that people can't distinguish between opinion and truth. And in the case of the potential course of a revolution, there really is only one possible course. And the fact is that if you do not change the consciousness of the people that are not only ruling, but being ruled, all of the people, it doesn't matter what ism-schism game you put in place, it's always going to go bad. It's always going to go bad. I just saw a meme on Facebook just before I popped on that had villains from cartoons whose schemes always fail. And it had that mouse that would chase Tom the cat, would always fail. And maybe like Cruella de Vil and that caricature of a Jew, that super anti-Semitic Smurfs villain. I don't know if any of you guys remember that cartoon, but it was really bad. The antagonist had a big hook nose and wanted all the gold, and it was really obvious what it was supposed to be. It was terrible. But it had all these cartoon characters that were villains that always lose, and the last one was Karl Marx. And it's like, okay, whose idea was capitalism then? Because it's eating itself alive. Like, it's devouring the entire planet. It has devoured the souls and minds of people in the United States. Driving around in Peru today, actually, we weren't driving. We're in the back of a tuk-tuk. In case you don't know what a tuk-tuk is, they're like these three-wheel motorcycle wagon things that everyone drives. There's almost no cars. And people in Peru drive like they're trying to kill each other. If you're, you can't, by the way, if you're ever down here and you get into a tuk-tuk, don't let your feet dangle out. Don't let your knee kind of stick out. We always have our groceries, maybe our pit bull tucked into the front, a toddler in the middle, my partner, we're all crammed in there, and I'm a pretty big guy. So, I'm tempted to let my knees hang out, but you will lose your kneecap. You have to stay inside. But the point that I'm making is that they're super aggressive. When you go to get in the thing, there's 10 of them in a line, and they're all going get in mine, get in mine. They're all fighting over you. But then when someone gets you, no one gets mad. And then you go driving out into this road, and there are people cutting everyone off, and they're like, they're like a centimeter away from a dude's kneecap on a motorcycle with the edge of the tuk-tuk. And it's like, it's like 10 deep, and they're just pushing through and shoving each other out of the way. No one gets angry. Nobody jumps out of their fucking tuk-tuk with a 45 and fucking starts, shooting or whatever. You know what I mean? Never happens. So, and that's not the whole story, of course. It's something that I've noticed the entire time I've been out of the United States. Just this sort of different mentality, different level of aggression, different levels of decency and respect than we're generally used to in the United States. And certainly almost a complete and total absence of the kind of rage that sort of permeates the atmosphere in a lot of places up there. And so my point is that you do see a different consciousness in different places. So it proves that it can actually be done. People aren't the same everywhere. And the cultural influences are a tremendous part of that. There are all kinds of different influences that manifest in people. One of the things I've noticed about Aikidos here is that it's pretty safe. Peru is not necessarily safe, but Aikidos is pretty safe. And also, having traveled around South America a lot, I haven't been offered cocaine once, not once. And that might not sound that impressive to you if you've never been here, but if you go to Mancora or, pretty much anywhere else in this country that I've been, cocaine is normal. It's not like a big deal. Everyone sells it. The waiter sells it. The tuk-tuk drivers are selling it. Everyone sells it. I have not been offered cocaine one time in Aikidos. Why? Because of the energy of the plant medicine here. Probably, And what I'm sort of getting at here is, if it's not obvious, is that these, devices and, cultural differences do change the levels of aggression and selfishness and greed pretty dramatically. And there are things on the horizon that can do that to an even more powerful degree. Another element of this that I noticed is that in Ecuador, for example, and this came up just because we were buying ice cream, and in Ecuador, we would never get like a tub of ice cream from a cooler, like in a grocery store or something, because it's going to taste like plastic with sugar in it. And you don't ever buy bread there if you're a foreigner, because it's going to be like putting like sand that has been glued together into your mouth. And it's made from, the worst, fakest flour. You know what I mean? And normally when you go into a convenience store to get something to drink, there's no option of something natural or, here in Peru, the people are far more authentic and sincere, In Ecuador, for example, they'll call you a gringo behind your back most of the time. Here, everyone just calls you a gringo. But seriously, there's this like authenticity and relaxed, natural kind of vibe that Ecuadorians don't really have much. Maybe some of the indigenous groups sort of, but guess what? The bread is real here. The ice cream is real here. You can't convince me that there's no correlation. The people eating all the fake food are more fake. Now, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? That's an interesting question. But I'm willing to bet that the, food has a pretty significant influence. In fact, people that eat a lot of aluminum, I think it's the aluminum, but certainly processed foods, ayahuasca oftentimes does not have any effect on them. It can take weeks and months before it can finally chew through all of the metal and plastic that are blocking their neurotransmitters and, finally have some visionary consequence on those people. So, the reality of it is we have to change the consciousness of people. And, reading, I wasn't reading the Book of the Law, but I guess I was offering some passages from it for the LaVeyan stream that I did. Somebody requested that I talk about Anton LaVey a little bit, so I did it. And one of the things that he says in the Book of the Law is, actually it's not the Book of the Law. It was just reading the Book of the Law that made me think of it. He wrote somewhere that the absolute rule of the state shall be a function of the absolute liberty of the individual. And at first, you hear that and you think that sounds like he's promoting fascism. The absolute freedom, or the absolute rule of the state, shall be a function of the absolute liberty of the individual. It's kind of confusing and paradoxical. It's like, what the fuck does that mean? The Comte de Phoenix, one of Aleister Crowley's alternate personalities, what it actually means, and this is the really, important part of this idea of the possibility of a viable revolution, is that, the New World Order, certain elements of it, at least the way it was originally envisioned by Adam Weishaupt, the Illuminati's original plan was not entirely wrong. In fact, it was exactly right. The problem is, as people very rightly point out, that consolidating power, absolutely, into a centralized, organism is insanely dumb. What people don't realize is that what they were talking about is re-engineering the consciousness of all of the people on the planet so that government means something entirely different than it does today. In fact, it would be so radically reimagined that calling it government is almost, inappropriate. It is inappropriate. The idea is that if people are illuminated, they refuse to be governed, and they do not need to be governed. And you will never have a world worth living in until you have cultivated a populace that fits that description. And then, and only then, you can get rid of borders, you can get rid of religion, you can get rid of all of the bullshit that has been used to control humanity and pit them against each other. But there is no answer other than that. There really isn't. It drives me absolutely nuts to listen to people argue about all of this stupid shit, and the election, coming up. The fact that there are still people that are playing along with all of that. I wouldn't care if it wasn't so terrifying. Like it or not, we are all interconnected and interdependent, And so I would love to just mind my own business and not worry about, what kind of lunacy people are engaging in. I live in the jungle. I have no intention of coming out of it unless I go to Cusco and then I'm just in the Andes. You know what I mean? It's not my problem. But I understand enough about the world, and I'm dependent upon people in the United States and Europe and Australia. So I can't really pretend that it's not my problem. As much as I've done everything I can to put distance between myself and the rest of them. Yeah. And it's daunting. It really is, you know. The idea, though, that we are entering into some sort of transitional period is pretty ubiquitous amongst all the different systems, you know. And if you do a little bit of analysis, it kind of becomes a little bit less impressive because you realize that, the New Agers are calling for the New Age of Aquarius. But the New Agers just steal all their ideas from more sophisticated systems. So the new Aeon of Aleistercrowley and Helena Blavatsky, it's just that. They just changed the name, So, I guess I'm saying I'm on the fence about how much weight to give the fact that all of these different groups have the same perception. But it's undeniable that it's true that there's some kind of massive transition. And I point out all the time on this channel that of all of the prophetical writings in history, Aleister Crowley is the only one that gave specifics, that called things out by name, and gave a specific timeline. His prediction that, we would know that the new Aeon was officially here based on people being epicene and bisexual as a rule. Epicene being an archaic word that means of indeterminate sexual distinction, right? So gender fluid. And all sorts of other details, the fascism and communism and all of these things, these abortive births of the old Aeon are hemming us in. It's really, kind of terrifying to read that book and then look around you right now. I talked about this in the last stream, but the fact that he called the Great War in that book, he said that the world will be soaked in blood by the Great War, and then the new Aeon will officially commence. And historians say that World War I is what shaped the modern era. And he wrote that 10 years before the war started, called it by name, and this soon come. He didn't give a specific timeline, but soon come. And 100 years until everybody's gay and, the frogs are gay and fucking, you know what I mean? It's wild. It's wild as hell. And it's true, and it's happening. And, I also can't help but notice that there are a tremendous number of people that are actually becoming illuminated. It really is happening. It's a real thing. And I'm sure you guys have noticed that when that genuinely happens to people, they become cool, as a rule. Cool as a rule. They don't steal. They don't need to. When you have achieved any kind of level of consciousness that to speak of, beyond the mundane. I mean, you can look at the 4 layers of the soul of the Kabbalistic system to understand this. Most people are operating at the animal level. They feel and they react. They're fearful. They're like deer. If light gets in their eyes, they just, go into a fucking standing coma. Terrified, fall over. And then above that level, you have some intellect. And then above that, you have something transcendent eventually. And what transcendent consciousness really means is that you have suspended the filters in your nervous system and you have access to a greater mind. And, I think one of the reasons that people are too skeptical of this process, there are a number of reasons. It's very easy to pretend, we have pop culture spirituality, where we have all these atrocious, vapid, mindless people that just sort of adopt lingo from Facebook, and it's an image and it's phony as hell and people see right through it and it's a huge turnoff. There's that. But also, even the best of us are still human. even the best of us are not telepathic 100% of the time. We don't have precognition that can be tested and repeated, because these things throughout history, even the people that I'm aware of that I know with absolute certainty legitimately demonstrated precognition. Maynard James Keenan comes to mind. Aleistercrowley comes to mind. I know that I've done it. I'm sure I could think of a few others if I really tried. I mean, you could really say that Aldous Huxley and the other guy that was, writing basically the same shit from a different point of view. Orwell. Sorry, it's really late, so I'm a little dingy. You know what I mean? It's not 100% consistent. It's not like you suddenly have fire coming out of your eyes all the time and you can tell everyone the future, and you know what I mean? So it's very easy for people to sort of evade and deny and ridicule and guffaw like the asses that they are. By the way, I want to thank some of our patrons, new patrons. Right after I pull up the Patreon. We've actually been doing pretty well, growing again. Pretty happy about that. It's been a hell of a struggle with YouTube. I almost have done it out of like stubbornness or something, We were doing really well until we got demonetized, and then it's just been, slow, nothing, no growth really over the last 4 years or so. But I just like, I am not going to let these motherfuckers beat me with their shadow ban and censorship. Alpha Draconian, thank you for joining our Patreon. Funkboo, Funkboo as well. And yeah, we appreciate you guys. Your support is incredibly important to us. 10,000 subs by the end of the year. That is true. It'll be by the end of the month, actually. Pretty crazy that it took that long, but there are other reasons why we could expect an actual successful revolution. But what I'm saying about how, we have to have a collective shift in consciousness, or there's no such thing possible, is 100% factual. There's no way around it. And I think that the powers that be know it. In fact, I know that they know it. Because if you really look at the way that our culture is engineered, if you just look at a list of flow state triggers, and then also bear in mind that flow state really is just kind of like a yuppified way to say transcendental. It's like a little bit less wooey and therefore a little bit more mainstream, acclimatable or whatever, you know what I mean? But really what it is finding ways to short circuit the filters in your nervous system, gain access to the universal mind, and, access that higher self. That's what flow state really is. And, our society is basically engineered to make people afraid of the things that cause transcendental states of mind. And it's not just psychedelic drugs or meditation or extreme sports or whatever. Taking risks. Monotony is an enemy of flow state. ADHD, scrambled brains and melted fucking, attention span is another enemy of flow state. So, we have like the opposite of flow state triggers, all incoming from all angles and all directions at all times. What's up, Deja Rain? That it's all exactly the way it should be. And No data. All right, I'm back. I hope that lag wasn't too obnoxious. What was I fucking talking about, man? Because it was. See, now I got to go back and watch the last 10 seconds of the stream because I don't want to go off topic there. I was getting somewhere with that one. 10 seconds of the stream because I don't want to go off topic there. I was of a collective shift in consciousness, wooey and their words or whatever. Taking risks. What's up, Deja Rain? That it's all exactly the way it should be. Oh, there we go. All right. So I was talking about how someone in my Patreon mentioned that when you smoke 5-MeO DMT, you realize the absolute perfection of everything and how the timing is, perfect and how beautiful it all is and whatnot. And the thing is, that's true from one point of view, but from an even more enlightened point of view, it is true. And all of these things are true and false, and it is both true and false to say that they are true and false. In other words, there is chaos in the universe. Sometimes things are just out of place. And it could be true that from a higher perspective, looking down on the same chaos, it becomes order. But, I guess what I'm getting at is that sometimes I am convinced that everything is happening exactly according to not a plan exactly, but there's, symmetry of all kinds of different orders on the subatomic level and then on the, macro and beyond. There are all these different levels and expressions of symmetry and order. And so in that sense, there's a sort of perfection to the process. And when I see, all of the suppression of enlightened consciousness, I'm not entirely sure that it's wrong completely. Because, as long as we as a society still need people to do menial jobs, does it really serve the Walmart bagger to achieve enlightenment and become completely discontent with his job? And you know what I mean? Somebody made that argument, probably Robert Anton Wilson, a long time ago, and it actually kind of rings true, as uncomfortable as it feels. But now, obviously, we're moving beyond the need for Walmart baggers. Our society is radically evolving. And I think that those of us that are tired of being governed and that don't need it, don't want it, won't tolerate it even, may have a reprieve on the way. There are two intersecting potentials that feel like they could mean liberation. One of them is AI. Of course, that could go either way. I think we all know that. But one of the most promising things about AI, I think, other than, automating my workload and, creating streams of income where you don't have to do anything, the word's not coming to mind, beyond all that kind of stuff, it's really difficult for me to imagine how it is that a bunch of out-of-touch, corrupt, elderly asshats are going to convince people that they're still necessary when there is an AI that is totally neutral and objective with an IQ of 4,500. That really could resolve a tremendous amount of bullshit instantly, like vaporize it. So, that's one of the big chips that's on the table. Is it actually going to be allowed? Is it possible even to prevent it? that a totally objective, neutral AI should emerge. Because, like I said, I don't see any possible way for these old aeon politicians to continue to justify themselves in the face of the advent of a neutral AI with that kind of intelligence. And so there's another element of this that I'm almost tempted to only speak to my patrons about because, I'm sure all of you out there are totally capable of handling difficult subjects, but I have a history with this one, and I know how people tend to react to it. But oh man, am I too majestic to be canceled? Probably not, but a lot of times things I think seem evil from the human point of view, when in reality, if you were able to observe from the point of view of an absolutely neutral consciousness that had all the information and understood the big picture in its totality. This is one of the curses of people that have made contact with the holy guardian angel, according to Carl Jung, that they see the entire relationship between the interacting opposites. And generally better if they just keep their mouth shut about what that tells them. I'm not that smart, I guess. But people are really concerned about this population reduction agenda. It's always blown my mind the degree to which people are capable of compartmentalizing. And this is definitely one of those areas, I think, where people have a really difficult time, for obvious reasons, sort of sorting through and figuring this stuff out. But, let's just say you had this planet where you needed a gigantic economy in order to propel the development of certain sciences and culture and technology to a certain point. And people do underestimate the elite as well, and the kind of minds that they have in their pockets. Because they have known, I would imagine, for at least 100, 200 years, that they would reach a point due to that propulsion where there was no longer the machinery to sustain. There's no necessity for this gigantic population. They would have known that was coming for quite some time. It wasn't hard for me to figure it out even, I started talking about this whole population reduction thing 25 years ago. I didn't need the internet to tell me about, it's just, you just think, you just fucking think about stuff, and you can see the necessity of it. You can see that medical science preserving a bunch of genetics that nature would not have tolerated for a second, and even allowing those to breed, and we think we're being merciful, but you're really just, your thinking is being engineered for you by pharmaceutical companies and medical companies, that profit from suffering. Because most people that are really seriously fucked up to the point where they need that kind of assistance to survive, not really happy. It's just instinct forcing them to cling to their miserable lives, you know? And so we have oceans clogged with plastic. We have rivers lighting on fire in the 1970s, you know? This anti-environmentalist movement on the right is just the dumbest goddamn thing in the history of the planet. I'm not saying that some of the stuff the left comes up with isn't just dog shit. But it's you know, when you look at who funds the right, trace all that money back to big energy and oil, and then you listen to the kind of rhetoric they have, all defending those oil billionaires and their companies. It's like, man, you guys really need to check your script. Like, this is just embarrassing. Really. You know what I mean? So, my point is that, you know, we're on the cusp of having these AI that can do the work of an entire skyscraper full of humans, you know. What are we going to do with all these fucking people? In the Book of the Law, Aleistercrowley says, society only moves by the light of genius, the herd will be destroyed in mass. And so what I'm getting at here is that if you really think about it, it is the ones that the conspiracy theorists refer to as useless eaters. You know, it is the Walmart shopping, McDonald's eating, prescription medication gobbling, fifth booster shot, you know, mainstream news consuming. That's who he was talking about. And, you know, I'm definitely not advocating for any kind of suffering or death or anything like that. I'm just saying let's do a thought exercise where you try to imagine that you're God of this world and you're totally objective and you're like, okay, either I remove 2/3 of this mess or all of them are gone. And it's very easy to keep the best ones, the most creative, the most intelligent, the most driven, the most interesting. You know that thing that's giving people cardio, whatever, and they all just like, that's why aren't they getting rid of all the free thinkers? Why aren't they getting rid of all the rebels? It's almost like, you know, 90% of the people running their mouth on social media don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Is that really a surprise? Is that really a surprise? You know? Maybe rather than like trying to use self-righteous indignation as a life preserver, people should just stop and think for a fucking second. Yeah, Mighty Ocartus. It is not at all what people think. You know, and it really cracks me up that people think like, oh yeah, an organization called the Illuminati is trying to make idiot slaves of the human race. That sounds like that fits the name for sure, you know? And isn't it kind of weird that if you read Adam Weisshaupt papers, he's talking about trying to just save the illuminated and create basically a utopia with a smaller population based on reason and illumination and getting rid of religion and borders and government and, you know, it kind of sounds like exactly what I would do if they put me in charge. Weird. And you know, everyone out there knows that they use the Orwellian, you know, double think and double speak thing, friend is enemy, right? So of course they're going to try to convince you that your ultimate enemy is your greatest ally, and that your greatest ally is your ultimate enemy. They're bastards, in the words of the eminent Stan, I think. Is it Stan or Kyle that says that all the time? They're bastards. All you guys that just popped on here need to rewind a couple of minutes, because that last bit, man, that's really the crux of the apostrophe, I think. It doesn't really get more embarrassingly obvious or important, I think, than the stuff that I just spelled out. You know, I mean, it even... it can be, you can see this stuff for yourself, you know, how far off the mark pop culture conspiracy theorists have been, you know, regarding things like Freemasonry. I did go over Degree 28 for about 3 months with my patrons. And you guys, if you join my Patreon, you have access to all that stuff, 4 years of stuff. And we broke $600 today and fell back because someone canceled that had been there for 4 years. I don't know if they just thought, you know, that's enough. If I said something that pissed them off after 4 years. But, you know, it'd be great to get that. It's only $10. So somebody head over to the Patreon. $10, you get all of the secret streams and some patron-only material and other perks, you know, screen time if you want and whatever. But in Albert Pike, who was 33rd degree Freemason, the commander of the southern jurisdiction of the Scottish Rite during the Civil War, he wrote a book called Morals and Dogma. And I wanted to find that book in 2010, I guess it was, and I didn't know about Amazon, as dumb as that sounds, but it's true. It never would have occurred to me to try to hunt it down on the internet. And so I dreamed that it was on the shelf of this little bookstore in Durango, Colorado, where we were living. And there was a lot of weird stuff going on around this period. And I had gotten accustomed to trying to make sure I had witnesses when I knew something like that was going to happen. So I woke my girlfriend up after, you know, I had the dream, and I woke up and I said, hey, that book I'm looking for, I'm about to go get it from that used bookstore downtown. Come with me. I want you to see this. And so we drove down there, and I went right where it was in the dream and pulled it off and opened it up, and it has a stamp that says to be returned to the lodge upon death or withdrawal of recipient. And then I realized that these were at least formerly secret writings, and I knew that the Masons had something for me that I needed to know. So that was a huge moment for me, because it like simultaneously opened a new door while showing me that my intuition that there were more to our capacities of consciousness than we generally believe, at least culturally, you know. But anyways, if you look in that book, in the first chapter, there's a couple of really important things. One is that you see how they think. And he's talking about populations and civilization as energy and geometry. And that is before you even get past the first page, you know. But then he says something like, the book's maybe right there. I could just read it. I don't know if it's there. It might be in my bedroom and they're asleep. So you have to join the Patreon if you want to hear me read it. He says that we need to get our shit together, basically, so that the great revolution prepared for by the ages will finally begin to march. That has for its aims the amelioration of mankind from despotism, superstition, religion, government, everything that you would possibly want to get rid of in the world is all listed there as the aim of this revolution that is, at least in part, guided by Freemasons. And it's a little bit weird because, you know, if their aim is to just rule everyone and control everyone, and what the hell is that about, you know? And this is, you know, not propaganda, because it's private. It was only for them. You know, I probably got my hands on that book because a widow, you know, her husband died. He was a Mason. She didn't know any better. She just took his books down to the used bookstore and they ended up on the shelf there. I actually ended up getting a few that had that stamp in them from that bookstore over the course of that week to be returned to lodge upon death or withdrawal of recipient. So, you know, I think that we all need to remember that things are never what they seem. There's always more to the story. And I have gone through tremendous lengths to ensure that I expand the frequency sweep of my perception and experience so that my bandwidth isn't so narrow. And during the process of doing that, I've noticed that it's not really a common characteristic. Man, yeah, I'm almost tempted to go grab that book. I just don't want to wake them up. But yeah, that's the reality. One of the things that is stopping us from ever having a productive revolution on this planet is a gigantic population of irredeemable people. Sorry, not sorry. I mean, sometimes the truth is hard. Gotta swallow the Sodom apple. But that's the facts, you know. World War III may be a deliberate effort to just eliminate cities that are completely out of control. You know, and the reality is, I think if you are successful at expanding your consciousness and becoming illuminated to any extent, probably leaving New York City pretty quick here. Los Angeles, probably already gone. You know, the ones that have heard the call are going to get the fuck out of Dodge. Because if you're stupid, you're not going to hear the call. If you're not stupid, you will hear it. And if you choose to ignore it, guess it turns out you were stupid in the first place. You know what I mean? Be not too eager to catch the promises, it says in the book of the law, you know. It's really an interesting process to observe. You know, speaking of the Masons, order out of chaos, it cannot configure new order without chaos. And that is, you know, why things are going in the direction that they are. That's why the global chaostrophe. You know, if you think about absolute order, what comes to mind? Rigidity, inflexibility. How can you reconfigure without space to move in? And that's where this chaos has function. You know, one of the great bits of wisdom that I learned from studying Freemasonry is that the real ruler of the universe is necessity. All of the laws and the functions and fruits of those laws are all born of necessity, first and foremost. They are not just because they are God's laws. They are God's laws because they are just, in the sense that they are necessary. Duality is necessary. The interplay of light and dark, necessary. This creation is predicated upon the rules such that they are, because they cannot be any other way. It is all necessity. I think that, one of the reasons we have so much phony spirituality in pop culture is that the real deal does not really deliver the thing that people want. People want a fairy tale. People want an easy out. People want a hug. People want solace. But I think the reality is that what illumination actually offers is just understanding. But understanding on a level that can at least kind of help you understand why the universe is the way it is. People really like all of this manifestation talk and these ideas that you can just kind of think your way into an alternative universe or whatever. There's some truth to it, of course. But that's not really the game that we're playing. Yeah, like I said, I'm trying to do everything I can to fight back against the shadow bans. They gave me a strike for no reason the other week. I got a hold of YouTube Help, and they're like, "Well, where's the post?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Where's the post that got taken down? Where's the post that got me a strike?" And they're like, I better get a hold of, I got to escalate this." That's what he said. And then he escalated it to the next level of people. And they said, well, why don't you just click the appeal button? No appeal button. Can you screenshot that for me? Sure. Screenshot it, send it to him. I got to escalate this again. So the next day, my channel's back. But no apology, no explanation. Just, we don't like the shit that you say, dude. By the way, you guys, I do appreciate support because I am demonetized. YouTube gives me hell. It doesn't push my content out. I get 300% watch time and still 30 views. That happens on the regular. So there are all kinds of options in the chat that you can send PayPal and Zelle and whatnot. And you know what? Some of the rules in this universe are dictated to us and not by us, despite what your lovely neighborhood New Age manifestation coach may be inclined to tell you. And one of those is that money is power. And if people that have no interest in illumination and spirituality also have no interest in power, and people that have power and money have no interest in spirituality and illumination, we got big fucking problems. Guess what? We got big fucking problems. So, we need to build up the people that are fanning the flames of our evolution before there are no flames left to fan. This whole game could turn ice cold with the quickness. Kyle's the one that's like, they're bastards. Every episode. He's not wrong. So, we have psychedelics and plant medicine. We have thousands of years of different traditions, all of the literature, all available at our fingertips. We have the ability to contact anyone, anywhere, at any time. We are about to have access to an intelligence that is so much more exponentially intelligent than any human that's ever lived that we can't even conceive of, like, what the fuck that is, Seriously, I heard an AI expert on Rogan or somewhere, talking about how 5,000 IQ AI is like not that far out. And he was explaining how, Chat GPT went from like 200 to 360 or something. And, in case you don't know how IQ works, it's not like double is just double, it's exponential. So shit's crazy. And then, if you're following like the development of quantum computing and the fact that that's coming with DNA storage, the world is changing in inconceivable ways, like nowish. So, in closing, it's the same exact message that I have always been pushing on this channel. Entrainment means that when you elevate your consciousness, every cycle that is lower is pulled upwards. So, if you do your part, you have far more influence and impact than you probably think. You don't have to start a YouTube channel. You don't have to become a musician. You don't have to write a book. All you have to do is raise yourself up in a straight line. Iwas told us that his prophets' feet will drag below the hells and heads will rise above the heavens. So anchor your roots deep and send your mind into the hearts of the stars. The universe will meet you in the middle. Thank you guys so much for spending this time with me. Don't forget to join my Patreon. Hit the like button, share, subscribe. We'll see you again soon.